Things aren't weird. The mask just came off. Vlog video for March 15, 2022. The mask came off. Pandoras Box was opened. The genie was let out of the lamp. The people can see that the emperor has no clothes. We've pulled back the curtain and now see the wizard. But many people think things have gotten weird. But nah, it's just now you can finally see it for what it is. Fake news becomes real history. So this is a concern of mine. When a lot of people read fake news right now, they just think, whatever, it's fake news. It's fake. Don't worry about it. It's fake. Don't bother. Well, the problem is that fake news becomes historically significant. It becomes the historical document of our time. And if you don't believe it, think about when you were in history class learning about yellow journalism. Even the yellow journalism is considered historical. It's an artifact. It's an account of the past. And just because it's from the past, it's authoritative in the context and lens of the way the artifacts, the art of making facts work. The book Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley, I'm not saying that's fake news, but if you ever go on Wikipedia, you could find entire pages of Tragedy and Hope just straight copied and pasted into Wikipedia for some of the people in the book. Like if you ever read Tragedy and Hope, you're going to read about some people, you're going to say, oh my gosh, let me look these people up. And then you look them up, you get the Wikipedia article, and it's the same exact page from the book. All right, what age do you have to be to consume content? What I'm getting at with this is, when we were kids, we couldn't watch the Eddie Murphy Raw or listen to the NWA album or Dirty Lyrics, R-rated movies, NC-17. But you knew that once you turned 17 or 18, you could then consume the content. Same with smoking cigarettes and same with drinking alcohol. You knew that at some age you'll be old enough to then do these things. But in this day and age of social media, I'm in my 40s now, and everybody on my social media friends list is of a similar age group. I don't think there are any minors on my friends list. But yet my content gets censored to all of these adults who are, for the most part, personal friends of mine. And they actively decided to read my posts by adding me as a friend. And they're not allowed to read my content. It gets censored. So at what age do we have to be in order to consume content that's being deemed inappropriate or fake? Like, don't you have the right to consume misinformation, disinformation? Like, shouldn't that be your personal choice? Let's say you want to consume disinformation. Couldn't you utilize disinformation, like reading it and consuming it, in order to find out what disinformation is? So the fact that disinformation, what's labeled as disinformation, misinformation, is restricted even to adults, even to senior citizens, is I can't process that, especially when it's from consenting adults. I don't know how this goes by. I don't know how to file this. It is bizarre to me. But hey, there you have it. When they would pivot to choice. So if you said a couple months ago, before they turned this whole thing off, if you said you were being forced into taking the procedure, the conditioned response is, you're not being forced. It's your choice. So thankfully some memes came out that said, let's make your life completely impossible until you give in. Q was an enjoyable storyline. So I made a video in early 2018. It's called What Makes a Good Conspiracy Theorist? And it's worth rewatching now because I made it because I knew from prior experiences what was going to happen in the end. Basically, you had everybody's account deleted, and then a corporate media publication video would come out saying that the whole thing was a hoax and have a few people testimonials on it and say everything was fake and that anybody that believed in it was crazy. So if you go rewatch my video, I'll try to remember to link it below. You'll see that I said from the very beginning, because it started around late October, November 2017. So I think my video is in January 2018. I specifically mentioned how to consume the content, how to utilize it. And apparently it fell on deaf ears and everybody did it wrong. So that's okay. Preaching to the choir silos. When I talk intelligently to the opposition and show them how thorough I've mapped out their ideology, they're intrigued and they have desire to hear more. They've been in their silo safe space for so long, and they haven't heard what criticism or identification of their tactics sounds like. They also haven't heard ideas beyond their own spoken eloquently. Once I learned of the concept preaching to the choir and also the idea of expanding your base or expanding, like in sales, you always have to expand out to farther, to more and more accounts. So to just speak amongst your group, amongst your silo, amongst your choir, amongst your safe space, it doesn't advance your cause. And I think because the one side has had their safe spaces and sticks in their silo, and the other side gets out there and evangelizes their side, I think that's why the tide has turned in the info war. Not only that, for 8 years, the opposition, all they would have to do to silence opposition to their side would be to scream racist. And they've gotten fairly lazy because they haven't had to fight, whereas the other side had to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, smoke and gun, and even so with the whole media against them. That side's gotten pretty clever. But preach to the choir, staying in your silo, staying in your safe space, not a good idea. And the other side, too, is that they've partitioned the they that controls the social media. They've somehow created algorithms to successfully partition the groups away from each other so that they can control and propagandize each of the factions and keep them in their own silo so that the sides can't compare their notes. Do people want the news to piss them off? If you watch the polarized news and watch both sides, the majority of the content is both sides accusing the other side of doing things that would enrage the audience. So it's good to make sure you consume multiple angles and evaluate how they do it. And from what and especially when I speak to opposition people, the boogeymen that they have generally are irrelevant to the side they're against. Meaning there's like straw men that get invented that aren't even like prominent figures amongst the followers of the side. If they release a social credit score, if somehow they release a social credit score in the United States, make sure to pressure all of the insiders, all of the managers, all of the people of power to add you to their social network so that they'll have skin in the game and so that they will not go all the way. And what I mean by that, so utilize populist tactics like, what, you're not going to add your subordinates? And so make sure to require all the higher ups to have to add the subordinates to their social network. That way, because a lot of people, so what people do is they also silo themselves into their own groups of people because they can, through the cult of the culture, of a corporate culture, of a religious culture, they can police themselves through the desire to not be shunned. So the goal there is then to get people that are not part of that same social circle added to their friend list or whatever the equivalent is of the time, because I believe that people's social credit scores will also be their downline of their friends, families, acquaintances, associates, in order so that people will police themselves. But the interesting part about hierarchies inside of a corporate situation is that power doesn't really exist outside of that building. And people will do what they will do outside of work. And so if you're on the downstream of somebody and they can't police you, but you've socially pressured them into making sure they add all of their subordinates so that they can't just live the high life, then I think we could keep this social credit score system in check. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. I know it sounds a little strange how I'm saying it, but just imagine, what I learned a long time ago was that some king invented a clock and invented time, and because he always was looking for ways to have less policemen. How can I get the people to police themselves? And better yet, how can I get something that's not even alive to police them? And so that's where the clock came in. The clock stands up high, and everybody sees the clock. The clock is watching everybody. Everybody has to obey the clock and be on time. And then if you're late to something, you then risk punishment. And it's also widely held and observed that the punishment is legit because everybody else shows up on time. And if you didn't, then you're the odd person out. So then there's no pressure on the punisher of punishing the behavior. Punishing behavior is how you create consent, how you create conformity. So in this case, they want to invent the social credit score where everybody that you know affects your credit score so that you then police everybody you know to conform and stay in line, because if they do something that's out of line, then that will impact your credit score. So it's in your interest that everybody that's affiliated with you behaves correctly. And that then removes it, it takes away the centralization of having to pay to impose and enforce behavior, and it puts it on each person. It's quite clever, and in ways it's decentralized, but if the social norm is controlled centrally, then no good. You ever get this feeling that it's almost as if they want the end to happen? And when I say they, I don't mean they, I mean people, the people you know, the people you encounter. So you ever talk to people who say, the country's gone to heck. Oh, man, it's over. Oh, gosh, the tyranny is so large. It's like they're looking forward to losing. The attitude is as if they are content with the tyranny that is occurring just so that they could say, I told you so. Like the creeping tyranny is their ball and chain significant other, as if they say they loathe the enslavement, yet enable it by submitting to the demands that they don't really have a defined consequence. You know what I'm talking about? I feel like some people want the crash to happen, not just the financial crash, but the collapse of society, because they feel like it's gotten away from them, but they don't see that it's all evolution. It's all due to the factors and the rewards and punishments and the reinforcement that exists in the society. It's like they love the pain. It's like they want it to fail. Do you know people that it's the best day of their week is when the stock market's going down, or if you're in I knew some guys that they weren't happy unless they were upset. I know other guys that if everything is calm and peaceful, they're suicidal, but when things are chaotic, they're invigorated and they feel like they're living. So it's like they love the pain, like they want it to fail. And remember this one too. I've had people in decision-making positions tell me that they think Americans have too much freedom. And to me, that sentiment is thoroughly unacceptable. The power of positive thinking. My parents passed down to me without saying it, the power of positive thinking. They never called it that. They never even said that they were doing that. I just watched. I learned through example. They don't dwell. They don't make excuses. They only saw the positive. They maintained positivity and always saw the silver lining and always had a positive attitude at all times, even when they're not feeling good. I've had people lament that I always find the silver lining, that I always land on my feet. It's like they wanted to see me fall and see me fail. And I don't know why. I don't know why they lamented. They should learn from it, perhaps. But I believe myself and my parents are examples of the power of positive thinking actually working. And we don't actively do it. It's not like we sit there and say, oh, let's be positive. It's just we're positive people. And I'm only recently aware of this from speaking to people who have known me for a while, but I haven't talked to them for a while. And I've found out how their lives turned out. And they tell me about myself or their perception of me, as well as their struggles. And from my external observation of their struggles, it's from their mentality. And I'm not even saying this cliche. Like you'll hear what you think is what persists, or what you resist persists, or your outlook on life is what happens, or the power of positive thinking. I'm telling you, I'm not saying this theoretically or vaguely. Their mind and their approach and their choices and their thoughts and their lack of confidence, but really their choices and how they and the negativity that they allow to consume their mind, their fear of what people will think, all of those things has manifested a poor future for them. Thankfully, through my life and through my parents' life, we've reduced conflict, we've reduced tragedy. Not to say that we haven't experienced those things, but it's all in how you react to it or in how your mentality is. Do you let it defeat you? I don't even like to even look at it in those terms. I like to think it more sports-wise. I grew up watching Dan Marino. He's like my hero, right? He was my favorite. He was like my role model besides my parents growing up. And Dan Marino never quit. And Dan Marino always gave it all. And Dan Marino, I'm going to say it again, he never quit. The guy doesn't quit. He had the heart of a champion. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go watch some footage of Marino. The guy was there. Losing wasn't even an option. Did he lose? Sure. But he was a winner. Even though he didn't win a Super Bowl, it's you got to have that heart of the champion. And so for myself, what I tell people, they think I'm like showing off. There's a saying, failure is not an option. I didn't even know that phrase, but I lived by it because failure wasn't an option. And when I say that, like I want to convey this without you thinking it's some kind of bragging arrogance. Losing was not an option in my mind when I was young. It wasn't an option. Do you know how like Yoda says, do or do not, there is no try? I pretty much lived by that. If I engaged in something, I was in it to win it, but not even to win it as in like winning, like Charlie Sheen winning, not like that. If I'm committing to something, I'm going to see it through and I'm going to succeed. I'm going to achieve it. And to not achieve it is not an option. I will persevere, and not even persevere like people say, I'm going to persevere. I mean it by an actual act of I am not quitting until whatever I set out to do is accomplished. And it's a state of mind that when you have that, when there is no failure and there is no quitting, there is relentless. I think relentless is a better word because, see, persevering makes you feel like, you're really trying hard and struggling. But being relentless means it's active and that you are out there to go achieve and go claim and conquer and obtain whatever it is you set out to do. And you're not coming home until you do it. And I thought that was present in everybody. It's often preached in our society. And I guess I was just obedient to the morals of to achieve. That's it. So I simply followed my parents' lead of being positive and having positivity be the choice I make each day about what my outcome is going to be. A lot of people make excuses, and they quit, they get negative. One thing doesn't go their way and they're off to, I go get my cigarette. Maybe it's like a pacifier. Maybe that's how they got conditioned. Every time they cried, they got the pacifier. But you have a choice in all situations. You can choose the negativity dark side, or you could choose the positive light. I always choose the positivity. And I don't know why. It is your choice. You can choose the negativity and get all of the negative outcomes, or you could choose the positive light and get the positive outcomes. The choice is yours. The elasticity of demand. Now, when I mention this, it's not to talk economics. It's to give an analogy. But the economic definition is the elasticity of demand refers to the degree in the change in demand when there is a change in another economic factor such as the price or income. If demand for a good or service remains unchanged, even when the price changes, demand is said to be inelastic. So what I see is the media is always running a psychological operation to see how far they can push you before you break or before you say no. So with the prices of the elasticity of demand, when certain resources get to a certain price, then sometimes an alternative is sought out. In other situations, the price doesn't matter. The product will be bought at any price. And with people, a lot of them will take as much nonsense as the media throws at them, but everybody has a breaking point and there's a tipping point. And I think that's what we're always being tested on. It's like the pimp game. They want to see how far they can take you, how far they can distort reality before you say, hey man, this reality is not adding up. Environmental justice. I heard Joe Biden mention environmental justice in his State of the Union speech. And who comes up with this stuff? I'm not saying it doesn't exist, and yeah, it does to a certain extent. But I don't know why people of countries that have established EPAs and environmental standards and quality of air and quality of their environment should be punished, that they actually established criteria of what is acceptable. And the places that haven't established those criteria and live up to those criteria, they're going to be redistributed to them. The USA, okay, sure, we might be polluting other countries, but we established great standards for cleanliness, for air quality, and all those other things. I don't know why we're supposed to be punished with environmental justice. That's because we didn't create it. Multinational corporations are the ones that had the ability to create pollution in other countries so that they could financially benefit in other countries. None of the average people own those multinational corporations. So I don't know why we're being punished. So that concludes today's presentation. If anything I said inspired you to leave a comment, feel free to do so. And I'll see you next time.